वेलकम ऑडियंस, दिस इज पार्थ साने हियर. मैं आपके साथ प्रेजेंट कर रहा हूँ टुडे विद डॉक्टर कर्नल सिद्धार्थ शुक्ला. ही इज हियर एज अ गेस्ट प्रेजेंटिंग. हमारे साथ वीकली अकरेंस हमारा शो है, एंड वी आर गोइंग टू प्रेजेंट टॉपिक ऑन सैटेलाइट एंड बैटलफील्ड कम्युनिकेशंस. क्या क्या हो सकता है इसके पूरे डोमेन में. व्हाट इज द डिफरेंट डिफरेंट एरियाज व्हिच आर रेलेवेंट टू दिस डिस्कशन. एंड So sir, please educate us. बताइए हमारे को कि how we can learn more about this. It's a very exciting field for many youngsters and engineers who will work for our nation.
Yeah. So this topic, military communications is very close to my heart because 24 years in the army and corps of signals as a colonel, I've been, part in designing and operating such networks in such critical and difficult terrains. That is what we have done over the years. So, see, the basic we have to understand what is the difference between a civilian setup of communication, which also have been part post my, retirement from the army. I've been part of a leading telecom cellular operator, Airtel Bharti Airtel. And what is the difference between a civilian communication like BSNL or Airtel and then the military communication? The first part is that civil communication is fixed and the infrastructure is provided in places where there is population. And finally, the more important thing is it is not critical in nature. Okay, so even if the communication fails, you can manage it through other means. Maybe if your cellular communication fails, you can manage it through the fiber or Wi-Fi network. Or even if fails, there is nothing. No lives are being lost, and it is not critical. And it doesn't need to be secure because there is nothing important which you are doing. Military communication is critical in nature. It has to be, it should not fail. It should be fail safe. There should be redundancy. There should be security. It should be swift because military operations keep moving, at a very fast pace. Every few hours, the tactical scenario changes, and they are critical in nature and very high, confidential and very high, I should say, high valuable information is passed, and that information actually decides the phase of the battle, decides the outcome of the battle. Hence, military communication is a very secured and swift and fail-safe communication. Uh, if I have to define military communication, it is generally two levels or two, I should say, verticals. The first one is the tactical communication, and the second one is the strategic communication. Now, tactical communication is for the tactical battle, for small areas of battlefields where you need to provide communication. And strategic communication is for the entire, you can say for theaters, big areas. So big portions of the country, say northern portion, southern portion, we call northern theater, western theater, eastern theater. So for theater communications, you've got these strategic communications because they decide the strategy of the operations. And for what smaller areas where the battlefield or the battle is going on, is a tactical area. And where tactical battlefields and you provide tactical communications there. So first, this is the difference. Uh, the nature of communications are very different. Or if I come to strategic communications, say the northern part of a or northern theater, we'll have static communication nodes with very high data rate backhauls, maybe of optical fiber, satellite connectivity, high data rate satellite connectivity, microwave links, UHF links, but very high capacity to create that huge, highways of traffic for that theater. And switching nodes like MPLS and IP routers, they will actually switch the entire traffic in the theater, and they are within the country. The biggest difference is that they're within our borders, right? Tactical communications are generally for small areas across the borders. The nature is such there is no network. So when we go for our exercises earlier, you'll find the entire desert is open for our exercises near the border, and we create an entire mesh of tactical communication nodes. And these nodes are generally vehicle based because they have to be mobile. As the battle moves, progresses, maybe the operations are going inside Pakistan, inside Bangladesh, inside China, and as the operations are moving inside, our tactical communication grid has to keep expanding, keep increasing into the battle, right? So you have these mobile platforms which are connected to they create a mesh, at least three numbers, and they connect to the last strategic node at our borders, and they derive the connectivity from the border node, strategic node, and thereafter on vehicles on the move, they provide communication grid. And these communication is provided on, say, vehicle based, or they can be armored based, tank based also. So inside the tank, you have this communication, equipment, and they have that basic communication, tactical communication on vehicle, either tanks or wheeled, as we say, can be having a switching capacity exchange through which the lines and the other things can be there. A backhaul, there will be a UHF link, and thereafter you'll have these HF, VHF radio sets. You'll have satellite terminals which are connecting back to their headquarters, to their strategic communication node headquarters. And yeah, so when I talk of tactical communication nodes, which are generally ahead of the border, it connects to the last strategic node, and it creates a mesh in the forward area, in the enemy's location. And each tactical node comprises of few elements, basic elements like a switching exchange, which can be given the local subscribers. The lines can be laid with the local subscribers in that tactical area, the army subscribers. And thereafter, you will have a backhaul of UHF link connected to the last strategic node and also to the peer tactical nodes. So it will be a mesh of a tactical communication grid. And as the battle, on the battle is ongoing, the nodes keep on adding in various different formations, and hence a continuous link of, it's like a caterpillar or a tortoise which is moving ahead in leap and frog. Okay, so that communication grid is extending as the battle is progressing inside the enemy's territory. And these tactical nodes can be on armored vehicles, say tanks, and also on wheel, like the normal trucks, communication trucks. But they will be having their own power source. They'll be having their own, switching capability, their own equipments. The manpower, the army soldiers will be there, will be trained on that to run and operate in, such even situations like shelling in other areas. And they will also have the satellite links for backhaul connectivity to the headquarters, to their strategic headquarters. So it's a huge mesh. So I was just trying to tell you earlier that we during our exercises we rehearse these creation of these tactical communication grids, and at places we go near the border where there is nothing, and within say 10 hours or 12 hours you find we have created an entire mesh because all our vehicles are self-contained. They go there, they belong, and they create this communication grid. And
Mm-hmm.
these communication grids are all secure. They are, layer one and layer two encryption rather. And hence, even the encryption is at the application layer, and even IPsec. All the secure communication protocols are used.
Mm-hmm.
So we
And then,
create
sir,
this.
it's like
Hmm.
one example that popularly we have seen of battlefield communications or disruption of thereof has been for the Indrajal vehicle, which recently was in the news. Where they had deployed some kind of a anti-drone system on a vehicle so that they can use some kind of communication links to disrupt the communication of enemy drones and therefore protect the infantry on the battlefield.
So this is called as electronic warfare. And in electronic warfare, you can decide what to, jam, or what to, when you mean jam, you're jamming the electronic operation of that device. So I can have a jammer for the drones. I can also have jammer for the enemy communication equipments. If I know which frequency and the location, what I'll do is I'll direct high intensity, high power radiation, electromagnetic waves into that location. So it will not operate. So their power levels will be so high that the jammer power will be so high that the enemy's operating equipment will not work. It will not be deciphered by the receiver. So hence, such electronic warfare equipments also goes along this tactical communication. So
And then
EW is again part of this tactical communication.
And then I was saying, coming back to the previous one, I'll also add to stage, the one of the graphics that we have to explain what it is you are
Yeah,
saying for the links. Okay, so that it is
yeah.
easy to kind of, explain what is it that we are talking about. So
So
maybe you can describe about this, sir.
So the lowest formation is platoon or a section, and thereafter from section it goes to the company, company it goes to the battalion, and thereafter the brigade, right? So as the forward areas with the soldiers, they have to be in communication. So even the helmets, if they are connected on various wireless protocols, they have to be connected and they should be speak to each other. Once they have to speak to each other, hence the forward communication node has to have something cellular kind of a connectivity, right? That within that area, it can allow users to speak wirelessly. So we have that kind of communication. Thereafter, from there, the communication node should speak to the nearest communication node because this soldier wants to speak to some other soldier of a different battalion or a brigade. So through the communication node grids, you can see the links are there connected between the different vehicles. Further, these vehicles who are in the forward need to be connected to the rear, to the strategic nodes, to the headquarters. Okay, the theater headquarters. So satellites are used, microwave links are used. So you see in the clip that there is a mesh of communication nodes created, tactical ahead and strategic behind. So that is how army communication is planned, and you use all the factors. You use physical copper lines in the forward areas. You'll have the HF and VHF radio sets. You'll have the cellular communication protocols. You'll have point-to-point microwave links, which are self-contained in the vehicle. Okay, if you see there'll be a barren mountain there, but once in 12 hours these vehicles come in and they create a grid. And on the backhaul through the satellite and even optical fiber is used at various places, you will find that your entire connectivity is connected to the theater or the bigger northern or the eastern theater communication grids. That is how the army. This slide specifically talks about army tactical communication grids. You can have HAP,
Okay.
you can have drones, you can have other platforms, aerial platforms as well as the land-based platforms, all connected in a grid. Even when you say network centric warfare, that is what we mean is that the forward sensors are able through this communication grid able to send the information, critical information in real time to your rare headquarters, which have to decide whether to fire the missiles, whether to fire any anti drone equipment. Once they take a decision, then the forward area this equipment has to fire those devices, the air defense and such, say whatever from Osaka, all these missiles. So this network centric warfare is also the very important component is this tactical communication grid.
Right. And then we can also attribute our recent success in Ops Sindoor also with
Yes.
the kind
Yes.
of strength that we have in our communication networks. I think that would be a very fair argument to say. Wouldn't that be right?
Any offensive, either defensive, any operation, whether offensive or defensive, without communications, you cannot win the battle. And let me tell you, before the troops go into the forward areas, two things, two big, part of the army or two big different verticals of the army go ahead. One are the engineers which build the bridges and you know the minefields are breached of the enemy so that the troops can move. And the second is the communication signals where we have to establish the grid before the main body of troops move ahead. So and the communication cannot fail during operations and till the end of the battle, the communication has to work. So it is
So
very critical.
yeah. So I was saying it's very interesting that you mentioned about the engineers because my grandfather also was in Madras engineers group. So
Yeah.
I've heard about some stories from long time back from him. So I can appreciate what it is that you're saying. Those are they call them affectionately thumbis. You know.
Yeah. So engineers, there are Madras engineers, Bombay engineers, Bengal
Yes.
engineers, big groups, and thereafter, so in engineers are called as sappers. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Madras sappers. So again, engineers play a very important role in creating the path, creating bridges. So there will be various obstacles, natural obstacles, as well. There will be obstacles created by enemy. So even in our northern sector, we have created ditch cum bunds so that you create a natural artificial object. There's a bund. So if the tank goes inside the bund, it cannot climb the ditch. So concrete structures are created all along our Punjab and Rajasthan these sectors. Okay, so this is called as DCP warfare. So these things are created by enemy. So once we want to go inside an enemy territory, we have to, uh, you know, the natural obstacles have to be covered, and thereafter the artificial obstacles, man-made obstacles also have to be covered, so that troops can go inside.
And I think
This
this
is
is the
again,
next slide we are
yeah,
coming into, where
yes,
we are looking at some of the, you can say, assault vehicles, or our
so
fighters,
here
or
what
their
what we have,
UAVs, or
yeah. So what you see, those stars which are there, these are part of the strategic communication. So here, what has been shown here, that communication is required not only for the army, for the navy, and as well the air force. It is a tri-service function. Okay, so the strategic communication, they have to be connected to the the air force, the air element, the naval element, and as well as the army element, and all have to give their information. The tanks, the ships, the naval ships, and thereafter the aircrafts, they have to totally be in sync during any operations, with the enemy, and all have to be in sync, and all have to operate, fire according to a central plan by the command. Here we've shown something like a command post or central, say, headquarters, army headquarters, or the integrated defense headquarters. This is how what is trying to be imposed, that all the three wings of the defense, the army, the air force, and the navy, have to be in total communication, because it cannot be that the Air Force is firing and your tanks are also going around in the same area. So they should know where our tanks are there, where enemy's tanks are there. It's the same with the ships are firing to the enemy location, and our troops have already reached that location. Say, if I talk of Karachi, if you already reached Karachi, and our naval, our naval ships are attacking the Karachi port, okay, our frigates, so that should not happen. So you have
yeah.
to be in coordination, in sync. Hence,
Hmm.
the communication is a tri arm functionality which has to be created seamlessly.
Yeah, and then at least today it is little bit easier to get that like you can say link set up compared to before, because I've heard of stories from previous wars, World War II or before, long back, where because of miscommunication, it used to happen that accidentally the news has not reached, like you're saying, that let's say Allied or Axis forces have reached further, but then accidentally
Yes.
their friendly fire happens on them, because the forces who are firing, they are not aware that they are firing on their own troops.
Yes. So there is a very important, aspect in the army and air force and navy also, which is called as IAFF, identifying friend of foe. So you have to identify those troops. Even there's an aircraft, whether it is friendly or the enemy's aircraft, even if there's a communication received, or they use a spot an object in the radar, or you see physically also. You see some troops. You don't know whether they are your troops or your own troops. So there are mechanisms how to identify digitally, as well as by word of mouth, by some codes. So this is a very important. So again, communication plays a very important role there. And I have over 24 years, I have seen equipments, legacy equipments, where you have those exchanges, physical exchanges. Thereafter the telephones, the magnetic telephones, where you have to crank them to create the signals which reaches the other end. So yeah, communication technologies have improved over the years, and the way we communicate also has drastically or substantially improved. So these IP exchanges, thereafter the MPLS switching in the strategic, the dense wavelength division multiplexing. So earlier copper used to be laid, now fiber is there. Even now in one strand of fiber, which is like a hair, you know, thousands of signals can go by wavelength division multiplexing, dense wavelength
Yes.
division
And then the common theme that you can see is this: these are all non-terrestrial networks, which actually brings us to our next kind of image or slide here, which is this one, right?
multiplexing. Yeah.
This is the other part
So
of the things
now,
where we see the wireless aspect of things
yeah.
happening.
See, what happened is satellite communication was always an important facet of defense communication, because at forward areas, first of all, you have to understand that the army communication network is a separate network than the civilian network. We don't depend on BSNL and Airtels. We have our own network across the country, across all the theaters, and it is a air gap network. So it is not connected in a way to any of the civil networks, so that there can be any cyber attacks or cyber warfare from the enemy. Even in our networks, we have different components: the optical, the satellite, uh, the switching equipments, the wireless. Okay, so Satellite communication has always been an important part. I remember in Leh and Ladakh, we used to set up the satellite links directly to Delhi because the terrestrial fiber was not there initially. Thereafter, it came from Srinagar, Leh, to Chandigarh and Delhi. These links were already there. And we had our own satellite overlay net covering the entire part. Now, that time the satellite technology could only cater for few voice and data links. Okay, a small node can have 10 voice links and 12, say 20 data links of 16 kbps, 64 kbps voice links. But over the years, the satellite technology, as we have discussed in an earlier podcast, also has substantially increased. So earlier, there was only say 72 megahertz bandwidth of payload which the satellite could take. Now it can take huge amounts of payloads. Numbers have also increased. From C band, they have increased to K and KU bands. Hence, the satellite also has become an important a data carrying capacity element in the air. Hence, now with, as you know, that Starlink and other OneWeb, Eutelsat, these have come in. They can create, and these LEO satellites, since they're lower, the latency is quite less, as we discussed in our earlier podcast also. They can create a very terrestrial like environment in terms of speeds, data rates. If they're not very high, the latency is low, and the communication reaches quite faster than the geo satellites, which are quite high. So with the new LEO satellites, now the terrestrial towers, communication towers, and Army has its own communication towers. It does not depend on the civil communication towers. And even in the satellites, we've got different payloads. Our payloads are defined as defense satellite communication payloads, which are different from the civilian payloads. So what happens is now the satellite communication grid, which the link of satellite, the LEO satellites can connect to the terrestrial communication grid, defense, both defense components. And you can create a seamless network called as non-terrestrial networks or tactical or strategic non-terrestrial networks. So what happens is entire terrestrial strategic communication link over through the satellites can connect to the tactical communication grid. So in this slide, you can see that the aircraft, the communication, the forward communication vehicles, the tactical nodes, the ships, as such, the drones, all are getting communicated through your satellite links on the backhaul. And there's a gateway through which it is connected to the strategic communication link. So hence you see that both the worlds, the satellite world, which were earlier used just as a pipe as to take communication info from one location to the other, is now getting integrated to the hinterland communication links, which were more dependent on fiber and UHF links. Hence, we are utilizing the space segment with the ground segment, and they are now interlinked, synergized to create communication from anywhere on the planet.
Okay, so then I think this is the interesting part because according to what was discussed in a couple of weeks back, I think I would say there was some argument of what is the next frontier of AI. So, next frontier of AI happens to be space because the data centers, which are very expensive, and when I say expensive, meaning you have to cool them, and the energy also is a problem. They consume so much, not always possible. So the next frontier seems to be space. So this non-terrestrial communication aspect of things, or from the battlefield, the next generation battlefield for data centers or compute will be in space, where they are saying that they will use the satellites to essentially power themselves from the sun, and then they will be using the cooling mechanism of vacuum or space to go ahead and justify the incredible amount of cooling it takes, so there is less cooling requirement when you're up there in space. So this is the interesting part that I think, which is the future where we're heading to.
Okay. Now, you mentioned two things. One is AI and the other is data centers. Now, let me tell you, AI is coming in everywhere. In the tactical battle area, you need the sensors to react with the information. You can do edge computing. The AI engines can be at the forward areas. It can also be at the rear. So AI is getting incorporated everywhere in the tactical battle area as well as the strategic, communication. Secondly, AI also is there on board the satellite links. Now, AI will play a very important part in future battles, and your AI will help in taking decisions faster, creating smaller loops. We call it as OODA loop. So smaller, loops of decision making. Okay, And further, these AI, algorithms will also be there on board the satellite, because satellite also has become a very important facet of defense communication, military communications. You got special satellites launched recently for the Navy, because the footprint of satellite is limited. If Indian Navy is operating in the Indian Ocean and also going towards the Pacific side, so you need satellites which can provide them those data and voice links. Now, what you were discussing, the second part is now these satellites, what we see that all the quantum of data which is being generated is huge, and hence the data centers have become very prominent nowadays in any communication, maybe strategic or tactical from the defense perspective. These data centers, I've been part of, creating data centers for Indian Army, and same for Navy and Air Forces there. 60 to 70% of the energy is used for cooling of these servers. So there are huge racks of servers which house all the data, and they are in redundancy. So Army defense communication is generally in redundancy. One place, there is another there. There is geo redundancy also. If one location is getting fired by some missile, so then the whole network will fail. So you will have a same replicated data center at a different, maybe in Calcutta, maybe in eastern sector, maybe in southern sector. So what I'm trying to say is that you have redundancy, 1+1 of the equipment at the same location. If one fails, the other will take on, and which in real time it takes on. And also, if the entire location is being, rockets are being fired on that, or missiles is being hit on that, if it fails, you've got another location which is on the real time at different part of the country, very different part of the country, northern, south, east, west. Such can be the redundancies. It takes on seamlessly. So data centers are very critical. One has to understand in any defense communication or any communication of that sort. But problem with data centers is that the cooling is a very important cost. Though cost is not an important facet for defense, no, it is of high priority. But what people are understanding is that the payloads of the satellite have drastically improved. What if you can put these data centers on the satellites? The advantage is that since the temperature is so low, -50, -60, -80, so there'll be no issue of cooling. Rather, there may be issue of trying to keep that ambient temperature. And if the solar panels have become so, their energy they've become so optimized, and so performance is so high, they can actually take care of the requirements of the data centers. Hence, the news, because they have tried to put it under sea to ensure better cooling. The next object is having data centers on it. And through the inter-satellite links, you can create the grid to access the data in the data centers, because you continuously access the data in the data centers. Your servers are there. Even your encryption algorithms, your application servers, all these servers are there in the data center. So this is a new futuristic idea which people are getting, that why not put these data centers on board the satellites. Those satellites will be bigger, which can take more amount of payload.
And then coming to the next one, which is right here, which is this one, right? So you can see this is the military or combat aspect of the non-terrestrial communication, where like here in this image they are talking about some kind of a RC car or RC turret gun, which is being controlled
So,
to do any kind of operations for rescue or for combat or whatever that might be, which is actually limited by the amount of bandwidth that's available to them for long
so
distance
this,
operations.
this this is a clip from a newspaper wherein Starlink was providing the satellite services to the Ukrainian army, and they utilized this satellite connectivity against the Russian forces. And this, vehicle mounted gun was used to control the firing. And what they realized is the delay was longer than expected, and there were some issues wherein it could not fire in the time which it could. So these are earlier stages of NTN being used as combat communication. So here you see that Starlink, which was not providing communication to Russia, only to the Ukrainian army, and they use the Starlink, satellite communication link to control, as an IoT devices, control the vehicle-mounted, gun, and which could fire at the Russian forces. So they were able to do it, but they found that the bandwidth was at times lesser. So what happens is you have to cater different bandwidth, different satellites for defense, which should not be used because satellite Starlink is a common resource used by everybody. So if there's a common pool, if more bandwidth is used by the other users, what is left for defense will be limited. Hence, this is one example that defense communication has to be totally separate and totally dedicated to defense satellites. Should be totally dedicated to defense communication.
And from what I understand is like it's been given to them as kind of a favor, for the US government, where it is kind of communication network like udhar pe mila. It's like it's
So
that
the
kind of a thing
entire
where
war, see, the entire you let's if I get into the politics of this war, the entire war is being fought for US by Ukraine, funded by Europe. So
yes.
this is a totally politically funded war where US is fighting a war with Russia and keeping Ukraine in the forward in the front. So this is typical of US
Yeah, I
strategy
mean,
that
it's a complicated thing, for
yeah.
all the people involved. Like even somebody who I spoke to from Ukraine recently. So just
Yeah.
about when I mentioned, oh, recently we had somebody like we had Putin come to India. We are having great relationship with them and everything. So like that person got upset that when I was just saying that we have good relation with them, like they were like, oh, not so great for us or whatever. So like the reaction was very very interesting. First of all, I thought that the other person is of USSR or Russian descent, because that person was speaking Russian. Or at least they had a Russian accent. And then they were speaking English. So this is the thing. There are in Ukraine also there are many Russian speaking people, and not all of them also are in favor of the wars, which is like the other complicated part of all this story. But yeah,
But
some personal
if I
experience
if I
I'm sharing.
if I tell you of satellite technology, you'll be surprised to know that Russian satellite launching organizations are much better than even NASA and ISRO's. Our ISRO's. They keep
Yes,
a
yes,
low
absolutely.
profile.
Like
They keep low profile,
they have.
but
Huh.
yes.
I was
So
saying
they
they
keep
have
low
like big.
profile. They keep low profile and they don't advertise as much as NASA and other institutions, space institutions do.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm saying that besides SpaceX today, if I understand right, SpaceX is the only human certified program besides the Russians and well, whatever NASA may have, even they don't have anything functional. So SpaceX and the Russians are the only certified way to get humans up and into orbit for now. Meaning this technology, which is proven or in production today, only two nations have it, which is Russia and the other one is America through SpaceX. So it is, so you have this kind of situation where in the future it might change. Like for us, we will have a lot more, you can say, competition, and we are working on a Gaganyaan mission and other things like that, which will really help in our capabilities. But like you said, like there is so much that they don't say, but they are doing anyhow anyway.
You can imagine that by when our astronauts are going to Russia for getting themselves
Yeah, yeah.
rehearsed for study activities. And I have interacted with some of the Russian satellite. They are actually really good, the best in launching the satellites. The engines are one of the best.
Of course, of course. I mean, when you're living or working in a country like Russia, at that point when your expectations are so high, you better be good. Otherwise, there might be some other consequences. That's a different topic. But
I think the filter through which we look Russia is different. Actually, it is through the Hollywood filter. They have always shown Russians as if you just see the Hollywood movies that Russians are all
no, no,
different. That's not
it's
the
a
way.
old
I
Soviet
think
joke.
more
It's like a
my opinion is they are more cultured than what the US are. So
no, no.
that is my way.
I'm just saying.
It-
I'm just saying it's like old Soviet jokes. Like if
yeah.
like so
Even
like it's
Ukraine was part of Soviet. Even Ukraine was part of Soviet Union.
yes,
This
yes, yes.
no, this president, the comedian has been put there by CIA only. So just to get them out of Russia and get so all these are created. Most of the things are created by the West, if you see.
Yes, yes, yes. So there's this old Soviet joke which goes something to the effect of when this fellow asks American guys coming to Soviet Russia, he comes and asks to the factory floor worker, so how much do you earn? He says, oh, I earn 300 rubles a month, or whatever it is that is he earns.
Mhm.
He says, okay, so what do you buy with that? He said, I buy whatever car or whatever. He says, so what do you do with the rest? Then he gets confused, and then he answers whatever actually he does. Like, so he tells the truth. And then the fellow who told him to tell the actual lie, he forgets that okay, this is what he has to say. So maybe it's more funny. I keep watching this
So
Soviet
let me tell
jokes
you one more. Let me
channel.
tell you one more fact. These, you know, after all this, changes of dollar, de-dollarization, U.S. economy going into a crisis, and Europe is already in a bad state. China is, which is the economy which will do the best, or which is the strongest economy in the world? Do you know that? Can you guess?
See, in my opinion, besides India, I will say that is today Russia, because even after so many sanctions, they are going strong. That's my opinion.
Why they are going strong? The answer is right. It is Russia. Russia will be the strongest country post this, all the disturbance, because all the rare earth, all the, what doesn't it have? Fertilizers, crops, the rare earth, energy. It has everything which any country needs to survive. It doesn't depend on anybody. Europe depends on Russia. Okay. So many countries depend on Russia for various things. US depends on Russia for rare earth metals, but Russia doesn't depend on anything for natural resources. Further,
Sir,
as the global
huh.
last point, as the global warming is increasing, you'll find the Arctic Circle will be more maneuverable for ships, and you'll find the entire trade routes will change. So Russia is a country which will do the best, and US is going to sink. That is the reality.
Sir, and I will say that they will always do well. You know why? Because they make great vodka. Like you know,
So
uh,
I think the collaboration with Russia, India, and China
yes.
in one way will actually rule the world, and the entire, the power is shifting to the east. RIC. So BRICS is also where RIC exists, and that is what is disturbing the West.
Yes, 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 yes. Of course, of course. And like this is where I heard some rumors that people are talking about how credible it is. I don't know, but it is something to the effect of that BRICS group wants to have their own settlement mechanism for basket of currencies, or something like that. I don't know how much it is true. If you have heard anything about it.
It is very true because this this Russia-Ukraine war has exposed US's double standards on SWIFT and payments. So you've taken their assets, frozen their assets. Even the Afghanistan, you frozen their assets. They realize the dollar. They're trying through dollar. They're trying to control everything. So any country does a payment, buys something from the other country. He has to convert everything in dollar, and then convert from dollar back to that currency. Who is earning? In every transaction, dollar is earning. Price of dollar is increasing. So first of all, this dollar will cease to become the universal currency. Secondly, there will be a basket of currencies, which rather the bilateral currency trade has already begun, right? So we deal with rubles and rupees. We deal with the UAE currencies, and so that is already happening. What is going to happen is dollar will be replaced by one currency, either BRICS, or the other alternative is having the bilateral trade between each country's currency. So that will work. That is the future. So we'll never have the SWIFT. So SWIFT system is being replaced by various like UPI, our system. There are other systems which are working also internationally. Russia, China has its own system. So this transaction, international transaction, gateways and the systems are going to change from SWIFT. That is the reality. That is why West is so troubled, so worked out.
And I have experienced it myself. So like when I went to Nepal to travel this year, I was able to use UPI to make payments in many places. I had to
You
pay
will be
almost.
happy to know in Europe, in France, in UAE, even so many countries, UPI is working. So UPI can be one of the alternatives of SWIFT. So
Yes, yes,
if China also wants to put in their front ahead,
and I was saying, like, from a personal story also, I was saying ki it is something that I have experienced myself. Like
yes.
where you ask for that specific
No,
QR
I've
code,
done
they will
it
give it to
even
you, and it
in
works.
Dubai. In Dubai, I've used UPI very recently when I was traveling to Europe. In many countries in Europe, it is I've heard it is being used. So this is a new reality.
Yes, and even
So
if
we
you go to if you go to Eiffel Tower also, in Eiffel Tower you
yes,
can pay with UPI. This is
yes,
what
yes.
you're saying.
So we have shifted from defense communication to geopolitics.
But sir, this is the important aspect of it. No, when we said specifically with Starlink and all the defensive aspects that it has, like there is a aspect of geopolitics which comes into it, because anything that gives the enemy advantage comes into the aspect of whether I should provide my friends with that access or not, which is the important consideration.
So I'll
With
tell you another example. See, geopolitics defines defense, operations and even communications. When Kargil war happened, you'd be surprised to know that we would our totally guns, see RT guns when they fire, they have to know the location, exact location in lat long or GPS locations through GPS where the enemy's battery or his gun is there, so I can fire and destroy his. Without GPS, you cannot get the total accuracy, right? Perfect accuracy in meters. Uh, you'll be surprised to know when Kargil happened and India we getting our Bofors guns in Kargil. The US stopped its GPS service for Indian location.
yes, yes,
So,
yes.
so in Kargil, we had to, perforce use other methods, manual methods without using GPS to fire them. So you can imagine that when a war comes, all these services which we take for granted, our geopolitical partners, if they are not with us, we cannot use their services. Post Kargil, the Vajpayee government thereafter decided that we should have this NavIC system. Okay,
Yes, sir.
navigation over Indian constellation. Yes.
In fact,
So
like I have this thing here where this is
mm,
actually having a NavIC chip. So if you can see this,
yes.
I'll put it this way.
So
So
all yeah, this is a NavIC chip what Parth is showing, and post that I think 2010 and 12 there was a mandate that all defense equipment should use NavIC and they should have NavIC chips. Now NavIC has less than 1 meter or nearly 1 meter of accuracy. Okay, and in North Sindoor, NavIC was used very everywhere totally to get the results which we got, because with the NavIC, the BrahMos uses NavIC accuracy and we could fire inside the nuclear a strategic command post of Pakistan, and the missiles could enter. So NavIC has been a very important asset. So geopolitics plays a very important role. I was trying to get that geopolitically we'll always be closer to Russia, and that's why we had all our fighter jets Russian made, because post independence, Pakistan was always, US was always, Pakistan has been a proxy state of US and UK to counter Russia. That is how it was created. Okay. So obviously, we could not get the access because they were part of the CENTOS and all those things which were there. Hence, we had perforce Russia, we took Russia's side, and all these weapons, even our even our tanks, T-72, T-50, these are all Russian tanks. Okay, even our aircrafts, MiG-29, MiG-21, Su-30, these are all Russian version. We have the EW equipment which are Israeli. Otherwise, we have prominently been Russian. That's why when the US tells us no, you should change our arm, we can't change overnight, because, and we should not also, because Russia, even in 1971, when we went into Bangladesh, where there was such a huge problem with the immigrants coming inside India, US was had brought its seventh fleet here, a nuclear submarine, and the Russian submarine had to come and stop them. So Russia always have held a hand in times of such strategic operations and warfare. So we
they
have
have
to
always
take a
been
side.
our wartime allies. You know, like
Yeah,
we
yes, yes. They have never let us down, and because of Russia, the Bangladesh could be freed. Otherwise, US would have intervened in the war. Even because Russia is there with us in some way, that's why US thinks twice before getting overboard, like Iraq or such Syria, such situations where it decides let me go all out. So I think your geopolitical partner is also a very important factor in deciding your defense armaments and your defense equipments and services like satellite, you know, ancillary services which are very important and which if they are denied, it is something like a denial of service attack. Okay.
Hmm, hmm, hmm,
So
hmm, hmm.
against the cyber warfare that you deny one service or GPS service, and your uh, your enemy will not be able to function the way it should.
And this is the interesting aspect of things where if anybody wants to find out, like I can just put this link up for anybody. So for the here, let me just add this one. This is the link. Add the banner. Okay, so where is this? Okay, sure. So this is the link that you can go find out if you want to learn about the NavIC constellation that India has. It's a ISRO website link. You can pause the video and check it out if you want. That's the all the details that one can find. Very very interesting for those interested in space communications. There are a lot more you can say detailed documents and information that one can see in that. um, and maybe, sir, from what I understand is that the NavIC service right now, it needs some kind of upgrade or maintenance, because many of the satellites have come near the end of life, or they are just coming towards that. Um,
When
so.
okay, when I was in the retail and as the industry and government engagement, I've been always been interacting with ISRO. Earlier,
Mhm,
also in my military career, and also now, they have around 5 to 6 satellites which already function, and the new satellites already being in the process of being launched. So that service is active. Okay, so and the service is much better than GPS, especially designed for the Indian subcontinent, totally our own. And they are upgrading the satellites because every satellite has a time scale of 10 to 12 years, 14 years of geo satellite. So once that it is ending its end of life, it has been replaced by another satellite. So they have launched, I think, 2, 3 satellites recently, as per my knowledge, and they are
mhm.
in orbit. So that will not affect the functioning of NAVIC, at least in
Okay, that's
Indian.
great. So then, do you think that we will have a future, sir, like just like all the phone manufacturers have GLONASS, Baidu, or AGPS, or all these different constellation receivers that they have in our phones? You think we are near the future where we will have NavIC receivers as soon as some of the connectivity or the coverage improves to worldwide coverage? You think that will happen?
If not worldwide, at least in the Indian subcontinent, the government wants to mandate NAVIC as the alternate, location finding, satellite signal. Uh,
Hmm.
Now the handsets will come with both GPS and NAVIC. The new handsets which will come will have both, and you will have an option of choosing a NAVIC or a GPS signal, which is a US based signal, even GLONASS, whichever signal. So you can select the type of ranging satellite signal which you want. So
And
that
one
is
of the
there, and yeah.
please go ahead.
So that will be what should come is NAVIC should become the primary, satellite location signal service for all the handsets in India. That should, because the accuracy is much better than GPS.
And one of the interesting thing is that we are in a situation where even the time also, I don't know if people know this, but we have our own time. Like India has its own time and own legal time of standard, which is defined by the government's samay or nuclear clock that they have, based on the samay.nic.in NTP servers. This is where they are deriving this, you can say, uh, time delivery of
So
Indian
how do
time.
you decide a time? See, whatever your
Yes.
handset is getting a time, is getting the time from the nearest star. Okay. And all these stars are getting a time from a centralized clock, which is generally an atomic clock, a cesium clock or an atomic clock. And right now, earlier we used to derive that clock from outside our country. Now we have got own atomic clock, which gives the actual accurate clock signal for all the communication devices running in India. So all these cellular network, your optical network, everybody is deriving clock from a common clock, the standard clock, which is mentioning the summer, which is a atomic clock.
And I'll tell you, sir, like the interesting thing is, I checked what is the default on my machine before, like telling the world like what is that they should do. So before, when I didn't know this, it was actually going to time.apple.com, meaning it is talking to US servers to try to
Yes.
decide. what my time in India should be. Okay, so
Yes. So the
so
clock
uh,
signal is derived from the clock which is there at the Apple, server location.
yes.
Now that has been changed. That is coming from our Indian location.
Yes, but I have seen, sir, that you have to set it manually. In my case,
Yes.
I decided to set it manually, so that happened. So what I will do for the audience is also I'll make some kind of a write up on X on a post or thread. So if they are interested, they can learn how to set this Indian time on their machine, so that they can use India's time services, which is the official standard in India.
I think all Indians, at least, or Indian people of Indian origin, should depend on Indian time clocks, Indian location services signals, and things which are Indian, which will be more better for our growing ecosystem, because we are a growing power, and people should use those things which we have created, and then only it will proliferate in a better way, and that will make us more stronger.
Absolutely, and like I said, like the even somebody who is little bit more like techie fellow compared to the average person, even I did not know that this was the case, that the default settings were set this way, because when you turn
Yes.
on a
Even
computer, you don't decide, like, or you don't think about
if you check
who.
your Yeah, if you check your phone, you'll also find that maybe your phone must be getting the NavIC signals. So you can shift to NavIC instead of GPS.
Yes, yes. So if your phone is supporting that, you can do it. And then
Yeah.
I'm just talking about the time. Like, the default settings on all the devices is not for the
Mm.
Indian clocks at all. It is for the Western standard, or even Microsoft, or whatever the American standard is. That is the default for time. So if it is something that people can adopt and switch to, it's a good idea. I put out a thread about it, and then I'll just inform the audience in the next podcast.
Yeah. I think we are done for this podcast. We've discussed from military communications to geopolitics and Indian UPI
And
and
now it
NavIC.
is time.
And now
Pardon the
it is
pun.
time. No, it's
Okay,
great, discussing a spectrum of topics with
yes,
you, and
sir. Yes.
I hope our viewers benefit from it.
For sure, sir. Sir, again, thank you so much for being on the show. Again, Vapas, next week we'll do one. We'll get something interesting for the audience. In Until then, to the audience, Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.
Jai Hind, Jai Bharat. Okay. Take care.